Hello, everyone. This is episode 101 of the Meet the Farmers podcast, and welcome to the very first Meet the Farmers Big Farming Quiz of the year 2020. What a year it has been, from COVID and lockdowns to Brexit and dramatic weather events. So tonight, to discuss that, I am joined by an esteemed panel of guests, and we're going to look back on what has been quite an unbelievable year from all sorts of perspectives. I'll also be asking our panelists a few questions along the way, and we'll see which team comes out on top in the very first Meet the Farmers Big Farming Quiz of the year. Thank you to everyone who has sent in a question. I'm afraid they won't all be asked, but there's some really, really good ones that have come in. So thank you, everyone. Let's meet the teams. On my left, we have Guy Smith and Emily Norton. Guy is a fellow Essex boy. He's an arable farmer and former deputy president of the NFU. Emily is head of rural research at Savills. She's also a Nuffield scholar and a current director of the Oxford Farming Conference. And on my right, we have Johann and Gareth Wyn-Jones. Johann is chief reporter, of course, at Farmers Weekly. He's also the editor of Anglia Farmer and, of course, also co-host over on the Farmers Weekly podcast. Gareth is still living the dream. He's a sheep and beef farmer from the Carnethe Mountain area of North Wales. He's also been known to make the odd TV series, and controversially, according to one BBC webpage, he's the nation's favourite farmer. Apparently.
Is that his webpage?
It will have been. There's a great photo of you on there as well. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming on. 2020, where do we start? Your takes on the year, highlights, challenges. Guy, can we start with you? How would you sum up 2020?
Let's move on to 2021, shall we? I was reading something I wrote this time last year, and I said, God help us, we don't have a worse year than 2019. Well, what do you know? And I remember about 10 years ago doing a conference at Suffolk Showground, and it was entitled, Where Will Your Business Be in 10 Years' Time? Well, I don't think anyone put down Brexit, pandemic, worst weather ever, blah, blah, blah.
Johann, what have been some memorable stories for you this year? There have been quite a few.
Oh, I think, it's been completely unpredictable, hasn't it? And like Guy was saying, who'd have thought it? The pandemic especially. I think for me, the weather, as always, is more extreme and more unpredictable. And I think those stories of the storms earlier on in the year, and then the drought, and then the harvest, you just can't tell what's going to happen. And I think for me, it was the sort of the resilience and the determination of farmers to try and get through that, whatever was thrown at them. That's what I'll take home from this year.
Yeah. Emily, a year we'll never forget?
You will never forget. Well, all these things come around, and I think anybody who's involved in livestock knows that diseases happen. And it's interesting. Was it all predictable? Should we have seen it coming? Probably. Were we all busy thinking about something else? Definitely. And I think that's the big challenge with all of these things. What it has done is given us a crisis. And those sort of deeply evil farmers out there who've always said what we need is a good food crisis to make people remember and realise how important it is where their food comes from. Well, there you go. They got that. So, perhaps 2020 will be the year of silver linings. I'm eternally optimistic. I refuse to be miserable about things. It's been a horrible year, but, we've got to take the positives and use them for the basis for better stuff.
And Gareth, finally, your take on the past year.
Yeah, I'm going to take the positives as well with Emily, 100%. I seen our local butcher step up to the mark, do home deliveries, watch after people, and how important that local food chain was, local suppliers. And I think it's brought a bit of respect back to agriculture, British food. People got behind us, guys. My old fella says, well, the best thing we could do is get a big war and everybody be hungry. And
yeah.
I know we haven't had the big war, but it's been something that's been quite surreal, really, that people have had to think where their food is coming from, how it's produced, and looking forward to 2021, the agricultural side of livestock's been good, prices have been good, and things have held up pretty well for the dairy industry as well. It's been tough for the grain boys, I understand that, and it's all weather dependent, but let's keep our fingers crossed that we can go forward together as a group for 2021.
Brilliant. Well, I'm sure there's going to be lots of chat on the year as we go through. And honestly, I can't thank you enough for all coming on. I know everyone's going to be really, really keen to hear your opinions, but let's start this quiz because this is one of the main reasons we're here. So, listeners, there's 4 rounds, and we've got 2 teams. The first round is general 2020 knowledge. Question 1, and we've got some nice easy ones. In January, which Chinese city was the first to go into an unprecedented lockdown due to the coronavirus?
Come on, Guy, you know this one.
Question 2. Between February the 8th and 9th, a storm hit the UK and much of Europe, causing widespread damage. It was followed soon after by Storm Dennis, but what was this storm called? Question 3. In May, former British Army officer Captain Tom Moore, now Sir Tom Moore, raised money for the NHS by walking laps of his garden. But how much did he raise to the nearest million? And the nearest will win the point on that one. God, you're all very studious. Right, the next one, we've got a question from Tom Martin.
Hi guys, it's Farmer Tom here, and how exciting to be part of the Meet the Farmers podcast end of year quiz for 2020. My question is this: 2020 saw the 3rd hottest day on record here in the UK, but what date was it? Whoever gets closest to the right date gets the points. Good luck.
All right, question from Tom there. Guy, you should get that one.
Yeah, are we talking Woodbrook Farm? Because
Yeah, that would be
We've got-
hotter and
we've got a
drier.
microclimate.
Of course, yes. Question 5. Who was meant to headline Glastonbury 2020? And I'll allow any name from any night. And that's on the pyramid stage. That's a question from Simon Haley.
Music.
What is this Glastonbury that we speak of? That's some kind of cultural event that people go to.
That's the one, Emily.
No idea.
There's 2 more questions in this round. Question 6.
Typing.
Oh,
Somebody
yeah,
cheating.
this is,
I hear typing.
I think this is just conferring going on. Bit of conferring. Question 6. This year, this is a question from Sue Pritchard. This year, who said, to move forward, we need nothing short of a paradigm shift, one that inspires action at revolutionary levels? Was it A, Greta Thunberg, B, the Prince of Wales, C, Michael Gove, or D, Caroline Lucas? And the final question in this round, before we have a bit of a chat, what is the name of the senior advisor to the Prime Minister who apparently drove 260 miles during the coronavirus lockdown? So, I mean, COVID, which has clearly dominated everything, how do you think it's changed our thinking about food? Gareth?
Oh, definitely. You see a big difference in people asking questions where their food's coming from. I think it's been an interesting year for a lot of us as farmers as well, because we've had to change a little bit. And I think, it's been good because we've had an opportunity to talk about our produce and sell our produce. Social media is a great platform for many of us today. And I've never had so many questions and people asking, where can I get X, Y, and Z, from meat to eggs. We've only got a little honesty box at the bottom of our road, and there's my little daughter's few eggs, and
it's a very steep road as well, from memory.
I know you've been there. People were walking up and down and waiting for my mother to take the egg there. This is supply and demand. I should have 3,000 chickens, but do you know what I mean? People were appreciating it. I spoke to a lot of people in the village as well that were going, oh my gosh, I didn't know we could have veg deliveries from Tatus Trading, which is a local grocer, which is bringing stuff round. These things have really shown people that it's not just the supermarkets, that the smaller retailers, the smaller shops, and we need to remember that, and we need to really watch after them in the future.
Yeah. But I mean, quite a difficult year, as I know, and Guy, I think you know as well, quite a difficult year to start new ventures. If anyone's been starting a new venture on the farm.
Yeah, you wouldn't open a cafe as the best thing to do in 2020. And as I keep saying to my son, look, let's treat this as the pressure test, the worst possible the year to open a cafe. And if we survive this, we'll be okay forever. Because you've got to be philosophical. So it's doing okay, but permanently being shut down and picking up again, it's not what we envisaged. I especially early on when the supermarket shelves are empty. But I mean that wasn't caused by shortage; it was caused by panic buying. But nonetheless, I think possibly it did make people think about maybe we shouldn't take food for granted. But what concerns me is people have short memories, and whether this is a lasting culture shift, I'm not sure, and I hope Gareth's right. Because as farmers, that's what we must hope, is that people want shorter food chains, and that's something we should really promote. But just being devil's advocate, which I do very carefully with my Welsh friend, because I've seen the way he operates. What does concern me is that all the economic indicators suggest that we are going to go into a recession, and at times of recession, when people haven't got cash in their pockets, price becomes everything, or more important, and that might not come out in our favour. But hey, we can just keep pushing the cause, making the case for local food.
Yeah, Emily, do you want to come back on that at all?
Yeah, I think one of the nicest things I've heard to describe this is that food is the new commute.
Okay.
And I think that was a really powerful way to say, look, people are actually saving a huge amount of time in their daily lives by not travelling and not having to be stuck on motorways and not having to get from home to office. But what do you do with that time? And I think actually, as we all probably know and sympathise with, there is a limit to the amount of time that you can spend on Zoom calls without going mad. Cook, eat, be with your family, cook a meal for people, so I sort of think some of that stuff, if we manage to get the tech platforms that enable that long-term behavioural change, perhaps more people will be cooking from scratch and baking at home. And those things do help the primary commodities that we produce in this country. So I'd like to think that there might be at least some lasting benefit in that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there have been two really interesting food stories that came through mostly earlier on in the first lockdown, one of which was flour, with the whole baking push, and the other one was cheese. But I mean, Johann, in terms of food stories, anything stick out for you?
In terms of food stories, it's on a personal level. Like lots of people, we've started making sourdough bread.
Yeah.
How middle class is that? I think it's quite therapeutic, really. There wasn't really a lot to do by the time you sort of walked around the village a few times in early lockdown. So we got the kids doing that, making our own starter and that kind of thing. And I think, as everybody said, it gives people that appreciation of not only how it's made, but what it tastes like and the amount of time and effort that goes into making the food that we all enjoy. So and like Guy says, let's hope that the way that people think about food has changed for the better for the longer term, not just a sort of, people do have short memories, don't they? And let's hope that they don't go back to those old habits too quickly.
Yeah. Well, let's do another round, and then we'll have a bit more chat. So this is round 2, and I don't know whether I'm being harsh with this one or not, but it's the podcast round. It's not just on this podcast, but let's see. So question 8, Johann Tasker's co-host on the Farmers Weekly podcast is farmer Hugh Broom. But which English county does Hugh farm in? Johann, you better get this.
Do we get extra points to the town?
No.
Is he on Twitter? I was just looking up.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But not as his name.
Oh, damn it.
I did look that up. Just in case. Okay, question 9. Broadcaster and journalist Louis Theroux launched a podcast earlier this year, which quickly went to the top of the podcast charts, controversially. But what is it called? That's going to be a tough one, unless, it's one of those that you've got to know. Question 10. Name 3 guests on the Meet the Farmers podcast from this year.
Me.
You can name yourself. Guy, I think you just missed out. I think you were the year before.
Oh, that's really true. It's exactly a year ago.
Gareth was the year before as well.
I had to rub myself out then.
Question 11, and this question comes from the person who's the answer. Will Evans has previously claimed to have had a podcast threesome. Ben Eagle added the same claim to his CV this year. Named the farming couple.
We're revealing details here that you're not supposed to be.
That was a really fun episode, actually. Right. So clearly, with this year, podcasts have become ever more popular, but so have things like Zoom and Teams. They've become pretty much part of the furniture for lots of people. Emily, do you think in terms of communications, generally, just the way we all interact in farming circles, do you think that it's something that will be taken on?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think there's a definite limit. What it doesn't do is give you the social side. It doesn't give you, the conversation at the bar afterwards. But it is a really good way of exchanging information. And I think we will reflect. I hope we reflect in the future on why we are getting together as people and how we can share information, and when that information might be better shared online and when it might be better to do it in person. And I think actually for a lot of kind of knowledge type events, particularly for farmers, you have to travel a really long way to get to some of these events. You're tired, it's dark, it's better just to be able to dip into these knowledge things online and to do them on Zoom. But, we really miss the social side of it. And I don't think some of the, the social bits that the farming industry likes to be involved in, you could ever replicate a cereals event on Zoom. I know we've done a really good effort with the online ag show and some of the county shows which have shifted online this year. I don't think that kind of thing will last.
Yeah, I mean, county shows not happening this year. Gareth, no Raw Welsh. How was that?
Oh, devastating, to be honest with you. My wallet's a lot leaner. And my social life is devastated, really, because it's our shop window. It's where we all go to let our hair down, even though I haven't got any. But it's just fun, where farmers can talk about their problems, and it's bringing as well the city and the countryside together into one area. A lot of these shows are amazing places, and it reconnects people. And please God, can we have our Royal Welsh show and all the shows? I'm a president of the Eglwys Bach show, which is just down the road from us, which has been going 75 years. Massive privilege for me to be part of that as well. And that didn't happen. The Anglesey show, another big show, and these little shows and big shows are struggling financially because without people coming through them gates and through them doors, they're not making any money. So, 2021, let's everybody remember the money that we've saved this year and spend it next year in the show, at the bar, in the food halls, on tractors, on motorbikes, whatever. Just go and enjoy them.
It's going to be quite a party, I know that much. Okay.
I haven't left Essex for 9 months, and as you know, Ben, that's a very worrying place.
It is, isn't it? It really is. It's like...
And save me from team and bloody Zoom meetings. People opening packets of crisps, their mics are on, and then they want to speak to them, they turn their mic off by mistake, and then you're looking at what's on the bookshelf over their shoulders, some unsavoury titles and odd sorts of calendars you thought went out of fashion in the 1980s, and then badly trained beasts coming into camera view, and that's just the children mind, and then barking dogs say, get me back in the real world as soon as possible.
Should we do another round? Let's do another
round.
So we've got a farming round now. This is a farming and livestock round, round 3. Question 12. This is a question from Claire Jones. According to the most recent figures published by the Welsh Government, does Wales have more sheep or more chickens? And this is a bit of a trick question in some ways, I think, but
I hope this quiz is going to be ethnically balanced.
I don't know the answer, so it is.
I thought I've got to shove a Welsh one in there somewhere. Next question is from Thebe, Naratnam Healthy Man. In February 2020, SAV America 8018 became the most expensive bull ever sold at public auction. But what price did it fetch? And that's the closest to the price wins, and that's in US dollars. And just to be technical, it was so I'm looking for the hammer price, and that was for 80% semen share.
Does he not have a pet name? It's a very unromantic name for a bull.
Question 14. According to a poll by the Innovation Center for US Dairy, what percentage of American adults think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows? Is it A, 7%, B, 5%, or C, 4%? That's from Jude Capper.
Was one of them right?
Apparently.
It would be a genuinely brilliant, though, genetic modification to dairy cow, though, wouldn't it? If it could just give chocolate milk. I mean, that would be epic.
No vegan comments.
Question 15. This is from Joe Stanley. What was the percentage decrease on oilseed rape area planted in 2019-2020 compared with the previous year?
Does Joe Stanley want this in Roman numerals or something?
Is it A, 22%, B, 32%, or C, 42%? Question 16 comes from Rob Havard. Old Granny was the first pedigree cow in the Aberdeen Angus herd book in 1862. It's a history question, guy. How many calves did she produce in her lifetime? A, 15 calves in 17 years. B, 21 calves in 23 years. Or C, 27 calves in 29 years. And that is the end of round 3. So we can't avoid talking about the Agriculture Act. And Gareth, I want to talk about Wales as well, but let's focus on England just to start with. The Agriculture Act became law on November the 11th this year. Emily, why is it such a big deal?
Because it means I have a job for like ages because we've got to talk about it. Oh my gosh. It's a massive deal, and I can't underemphasize basically. And actually, it's really interesting in the context of what's happened in Wales as well. This whole thing about food, it is really interesting when we think about food in particular, because in England we've now basically, as a result of the Agriculture Act, said food is a private good. It's up to the market to provide food. In Wales, this new lovely act, which I really like the Welsh approach that they're now taking. He's saying that actually it's all about sustainable food, and actually we want to incentivise farmers to produce sustainable food. Here in England, it's all about, food is up to the market to provide. We want to incentivise you to produce the environment. And I think the consequences of that shift from money being about economic sustainability to money being about environmental sustainability really does beg a lot of questions about how farmers in England are going to survive if we don't get more of the market organisation, supply chain contracts, producer organisation stuff within the Agriculture Act really working well. So it's a momentous piece of legislation because it just changes the entire playing field of how we think and organise and plan for our businesses in England in particular.
Yeah. I mean, Johann, what's it been like covering this story over this year?
Endless. We do a lot of stories which are just, we know that we've got to cover them. There will be more exciting things to cover from a reader perspective, but things like the Agriculture Act and progress with Brexit, all of that kind of stuff, ELMS, the Environmental Land Management Scheme, they're all really, really important things that are going to affect all of our lives. And yet we know that when all of these changes do start to kick in, there'll be a certain section of our readership which will ask us why we haven't told them that their world was going to change, even though we have been doing for months, if not years. So it has been relentless, the ups and the downs, the ins and the outs, and trying to tell people what they need to know and what politicians are actually saying, even though they might not be saying things in an explicit kind of way. So yeah, a lot of the time, a lot of the stuff that we've been trying to do is trying to sort of decode things and get to the bottom of stuff. And it's a little bit like being a detective or a sleuth a lot of the time, because people haven't been straight about the implications.
Yeah. I mean, Guy, there's a 7-year transition on a farm level. How do you think farmers are faring? Do you think do you think it's feasible?
I still think markets and weather are more important to farm businesses than the politics and the policy. But of course, markets and weather aren't man-made, whereas policy is. Look, the Ag Act, and when you think we first saw it in its first draft, 2 years ago, and the NFU's done a good job in putting more emphasis on food in there, but it's still a bit of an empty vessel. It could go one way or the other. But if you ask me, if we continue the direction of travel we are in terms of ag policy in this country, will we be producing more food or less in 5 years' time? I'd say less. Will we be importing more food to lower standards in the future? More or less, I'd say more. Unless there is some fundamental rethink about the direction of travel as to how farmers are going to do. Well, some will do pretty well out of the public goods and delivering on the environment. They'll be very well placed, and so in terms of farm income, it's still not clear, and we don't know the details of ELMS. But for food producers, farmers that just want to make a living out of food production and want policy drivers to help them do so, I'm not optimistic. But hey, they say a week's a long time in politics. We're still with the no deal scenario still on, undecided. A nanosecond's a long time in politics. So there's a long way to go yet.
Yeah. I mean, Gareth, I've seen quite a few tweets in the last few days from sheep farmers wondering whether to sell this year's lambs earlier than they might do otherwise, to cash in before January the 1st comes along, depending on what happens. Do you think sheep farmers are right to be concerned?
Yeah, it's a worry, isn't it? We definitely need a market into Europe. The majority of the lambs we produce, the smaller lambs, go into Europe. The ag bill, again, is something, yours is set in stone, but we've got an election in the Senate, in our parliament, or our people in charge in May. So all this may change again. And as Emily said, there's a lot of things that Welsh Government are doing in the right way, but we have to get that balance. Like I was saying, we've got to get the balance between food production, environmentally friendly, sustainable. All these things can be done. It can be done. And we have to really look at ourselves within the whole big picture as farmers. We all have to do our little bit, I think. If we're talking about going, carbon neutral by whatever date, if it's 2030, if it's 2050, I think a lot of farmers do a great job. And we can always adapt and do better. Gelli Aur are doing some fantastic work on slurry now. That's coming out. Bangor University have done some unbelievable work on the uplands and sheep production and what the gases they're releasing, the greenhouse gases, and it's been very, very positive. But it doesn't seem to hit mainstream media. Maybe we need some kind of television presenter to go out there and make a programme and show the good things that we've got in British agriculture.
Are you volunteering?
But do you know what I mean? I think
there's volunteering.
Well, I know somebody that could be interested in the job, but do you know where I'm coming from? I think the public perception of agriculture has been tarred quite a lot, even if it's from government or from policies, and the farmers always the easy target, and a lot of environmentalists as well have just been blaming the farmer. But we've got to remember, these policies were set by government, and we're just following that criteria. And that's a very important thing that we have to go forward. So government has to get it right. They have to steer the ship in the right direction, if it's in Wales, Scotland or England.
I mean, Johann, one thing that happened this year, and actually I was recording a couple of nights ago, the 100th episode of this podcast, and we were looking back on just sort of general themes that we've been covering over the last 4 years. And Isabella Tree's book, a rewilding book, came up, and I was actually I was recording with two people who aren't connected with the industry at all, and I was really interested actually sort of their view of how that sort of set the world alight in many ways. In terms of that story, both from a farming point of view and a wider society point of view, I suppose. Is that relevant at all this year?
Rewilding. I think when I knew I was going to come on this quiz, I was writing a few things down, and rewilding was one of them. And I think there is obviously this big surge in interest in land management, landscape management, rewilding, all of that sort of stuff. Call it what you will. I think for me, the thing about rewilding, it's such an emotive word. And I think that language is obviously really, really important in terms of communicating the things that we do. And I think, understandably, the term rewilding gets a lot of farmers' backs up because they perceive it to be just leaving stuff to go to rack and ruin. It's almost like the antithesis of food production agriculture. I think there is a place for it in certain circumstances. And we could all probably do a little bit more of it. But I think that there is a danger that we perceive rewilding just to be the preoccupation of a certain segment of agriculture, and that is the big sort of large estates. And I think if society wants to take ordinary, as it were, family farmers with them, then they have to show how something like environmental land management and rewilding can work for ordinary farmers.
Yeah. Gareth, I'm sensing you're on the edge of your seat.
I hate the word rewilding personally. Absolutely loathe it. They've tried it in Mid Wales and it was an absolute total failure. I think where we go again is that balance. I think we can have agriculture with nature and with being environmentally friendly. It's not turning your back. That's why I get so annoyed with the word rewilding. It's like people just want to turn their back and let it go back to what, I'll just give you an example now about what they did down in the Mid Wales area. So they took it on. They had all these experts from all over the country. Shed load of money came in as per usual. They were telling the local farmers what to do, what they were going to do. But the thing that got my back up, which is most probably the smallest thing, but sometimes you need that straw that makes that camel back. And they bought conic ponies in, conic horses. So these experts had some of the rarest native ponies 50 miles up the road. My family's been keeping them 370 years. All they had to do was Google it. It didn't have to be a rocket science to do that. They didn't even bother. And the BBC put a massive spread on to say how these ponies were going to change and how these experts and what they were going to do. I was saying to myself, this is where we are because they didn't take on local knowledge. And that's what we need, is people that are working the ground, the farmers, the countryside people, the conservations, the gamekeepers, the people that do that. They're the people you should approach to begin with. And they're the ones that will take, and I don't like the word rewilding, but will take the environment and nature back in some places to where it should be.
I mean, I really want to talk about the weather this year with as we have our currently resident weather presenter with us on the podcast, Guy. But before that, Emily, do you want to come back on Gareth's point there?
Yeah, I was just going to say we are seeing masses of interest in rewilding as a topic within the Savills client base, which you can probably understand. Thinking back to what Johann was just saying. But what I find really interesting is that it's this whole spectrum of doing things differently that is actually really interesting to me at the moment. So this whole idea of rewilding is at one end of that. But there's a whole piece in the middle around, the natural carrying capacity of the land and being more respectful and working with nature more, where I think we've probably slipped too far the other way as a result of the availability of everything that's out there in the agrochemical industry. And what we're finding particularly is this huge interest in what we'd call regenerative farming practices, and particularly amongst the next generation of farmers wanting to come in who are looking at what's been done before them, and the older generation of farming saying, well, we've always done it this way. I mean, it's rubbish. You haven't always done it that way. You've done it that way since the Green Revolution in the 1970s, where we've had very chemically dependent farming. So this idea that we can go back to something which is more sympathetic, which is more naturally productive, rather than artificially productive, I think is entirely legitimate and sane. And, rewilding is one extreme of that, is the ideological extreme. And it will work in some situations, and I total sympathy with that situation in Wales. It's got to be something that the land managers and the farmers do for themselves, because it makes sense in the context of them and their business, not that something that's imposed by other people. So, there's a right way and a wrong way to do this, but I don't think we should discount it. It is essentially mixed farming, as if we kind of see it as mixed farming and something that is inherent in all of our farming bones, then we can begin to accept that there's a different way of doing things.
Yeah, and I'd love to carry that conversation on all night, because I'm sure we could, but we only have an hour. So, I mean, the weather has been making headlines throughout the year for pretty much every reason you can think of. Guy, number one, what's it been like in St. Joseph this year? Not too similar to me down the road, but take us through some of those weather headlines this year.
I know the word's difficult, isn't it? And contrary. So when we didn't want rain, we got it 5 times the usual amount through the winter. And then particularly in our little dry patch, when we wanted it in May and June and July, the tap just turned off. And it's interesting sort of listening to rewilding and what Emily says about going back to sort of pre-intensive farming, although I'm not quite sure what that means. But I mean, we had a third of the farm down to fallow this year because of difficult weather. And now, that's given me an opportunity to tidy up some blackgrass. And, maybe I should have been thinking like that before, but it sure as hell hasn't done my bank balance any good. So it's been I suppose, looking for the positives, it's been a learning exercise. But I mean, we had half a harvest, and if you look, the lowest wheat harvest since the early 1980s in the UK, probably the lowest cereal harvest since 1976, the lowest rape harvest for 20 years, and we'll be importing more cereals, more oilseed rape produced using things like neonics year on year. And so I think it's sort of, in a way, it raises a lot of questions about controlling weeds in different ways, maybe, but then in other questions about, do we want to be self-sufficient in food in this country, or are we happy about importing it from other parts of the world? Do we take food for granted? Is the weather always going to have the last laugh? Are these weather patterns the way forward, where we go from one extreme to the other very quickly, which will make farming more challenging? I suppose it's been a good year to have a good think about things.
What about from a hill farm perspective, Gareth?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We couldn't have asked for a better time, when the lambs are coming. We were out in our T-shirts, and then our crops then, in May and June were absolutely poor, to the point where we're thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do over the winter? And then the rain came, and then the rain came, and then the rain came. And then we were wondering how we were going to get the crops in, because there was that much rain. But do you know what? Nature balanced itself out, and we had a really good crop at the back end, which has given us enough for the whole year. And the lambs did really well during the dry patch as well, and they've fattened well over the wet patch. So I can't complain too much, but I really sympathise with Gareth's cereal job, and it's been a really hard year for them. Not just on the weather side, but they've been hit with a lot of things. We've seen with the oil seed rape and things. And the last thing I want to see is for these imports to start coming in. Because once we close that door on our British farmers, we might close it forever. I think we've got to be really, really careful. We've got to back British agriculture, and we've got to do it in a way that's balanced as well.
Let's do another round. This is the final round. There's only 4 questions in this one. Question 17. How many followers does Gareth Wyn-Jones have in total across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram? That is
TikTok as well now.
Is it more than 10?
That's from Ali Hunter Blair.
Oh, God. I don't know that.
I know. He said that.
What's the population of Wales?
3 million. 10 million sheep.
How many chickens?
The chickens, not telling you.
Question 18 is also from Ali. According to DEFRA, in February 2020, what was the average farm size in England? You can have that in old or new money, acres or hectares. And the nearest person to that will get the points.
I'll leave that to the land agent.
Yeah, rocking.
Question 19, did you hear? This is from Vicky Hurd. Which politician said, "over my dead body," in relation to weakening UK food standards for new deals? And the final question, this is from Tom Clark. Which of the following celebrity chefs did not support the NFU campaign this year? A, Jamie Oliver, B, Prue Leith, C, Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, or D, Delia Smith? Right. And that's the end of the quiz.
Oh.
How do we think you've done? Right. We'll go through. I'll add up all your scores, and then we'll do the combined between the teams, I think. Question 1, in January, which Chinese city was the first to go into an unprecedented lockdown? Anyone?
Wuhan.
Yeah. If you just mark yourself.
There's some honesty issues here, isn't there?
I mean, there might be.
I can tell you in advance, I've already got 100%.
You could go like that on the screen, I suppose.
You could read my handwriting.
You could say, yeah, you could put it on the chat, I suppose, but I trust you. Question 2, between February the 8th and 9th, a storm hit the UK and much of Europe, causing widespread damage. It was followed soon after by Storm Dennis. But what was this storm called? Anyone?
Yara.
Yeah, bang on. 3, in May, former British Army officer Captain Tom Moore, now Sir Tom Moore, raised money for the NHS by walking laps of his garden. But how much did he raise? This is to the nearest million. Guys, start with you.
4.
Gareth?
34.
Emily?
I said 19.
And Johann?
33.
Oh, he's bang on. It's 33.
Oh.
Yeah, it was just a little tiny bit under 33. Points go to Johann and Gareth. But I mean, Gareth was super close as well. So, Tom Martin's question here. 2020 saw the third hottest day on record here in the UK. But what date was it? And the closest here will get the point. Let's start with Johann for this.
August the 14th.
Okay, Emily?
June the 21st.
Gareth?
June the 20th.
Oh, and Guy?
July the 1st.
Oh, I think Guy is closest. It's 31st of July. Oh, someone said August, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh, Emily said. Oh, yeah. Did it?
No,
Emily,
Johann.
Johann said. Yeah, Johann said August. I reckon you're closest then. Points go to Johann and Gareth. Question 5: who was meant to headline Glastonbury 2020? You can have any of these names: Kendrick Lamar, Paul McCartney, or Taylor Swift. Anyone get any of those?
Yeah.
Emily, I know you got all
I
of
put
them.
Elton John down.
I've heard of McCartney. It's not true. No, I had absolutely no idea.
Thank you, Simon, for that question. Question 6. This year, who said, to move forward, we need nothing short of a paradigm shift, one that inspires action at revolutionary levels? Was it A, Greta Thunberg, B, Prince of Wales, C, Michael Gove, or D, Caroline Lucas? Johann?
Greta Thunberg.
Emily?
I thought it was a Greta Thunberg kind of thing to say, but then I went for Prince Charles.
Okay. Gareth?
I went for Prince Charles as well.
Okay. And Guy?
I thought it was Greta.
Oh, okay. I'm going to give you both teams points then, because it was Prince Charles. But yeah, so yeah, one of you each said. So you both teams get a point there.
Well done, Emily.
And question 7, last question of the first round. What is the name of the senior advisor to the Prime Minister who apparently drove 260 miles during the coronavirus lockdown?
Comings and
Podcast
going.
joke.
I was going to call him something else, but
I know you were.
was it Dominic Cummings? Or
It
something
was
at
Dominic
point?
Cummings, Gareth, yes. Point if you got that. Podcast round 2. Johann Tasker's co-host on the Farmers Weekly podcast is farmer Hugh Broom, but in which English county does Hugh farm? I'm going to ask Johann this.
Sorry.
Yeah. Everyone got that? Anyone got that?
Dorking. I want an extra point for Dorking.
Oh, to be
I wasn't
honest.
part Essex.
It's like everything the other side of the office is dying, isn't it? I know.
Guy, I know I said I wasn't going to, but I'm going to give you another point for that.
That's fair.
Yeah, great. Good decision.
That's good knowledge. That's good knowledge. Broadcaster and journalist Louis Theroux launched a podcast earlier this year, which quickly went to the top of the podcast charts. That was called Grounded with Louis Theroux. Anyone get that?
Yeah.
Nope.
Name 3 guests on the Meet the Farmers podcast this year. And just to be fair, I'm going to ask you all. I'm going to ask you all to type this into the group chat, just in case. I'm just going to be fair to everyone.
Did you say we were allowed to say me or not? Like
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm doing here.
So, Gareth, you can say yours. You can say yours.
I'm going to say Emily and Kate, Bevan,
Yeah.
and the Red Shepherdess.
She wasn't. I really want her to come on next year, but you got 2 of them. But I need all 3. Who have we got?
I've chatted mine.
Jane Craigie, Joe Stanley, Sue Pritchard, perfect. Yeah. Sue Capper, yeah. Sue Pritchard, yeah, brilliant.
Mark and Laura Buckingham.
I'm gonna give you all points of that. And final one. Will Evans has previously claimed to have a podcast threesome. Ben Eagle added the same claim to his CV this year. Name the farming couple. Who's the kind of person who would write this question? It was Pete and Paula Hines, Dairy Farms in Ireland. Round 3. According to the most recent figures published by the Welsh government, does Wales have more sheep or more chickens? I thought Claire was a bit mean with this question. So the most recent figures are the 2019. So it was released this year. It was a report that was released this year, but it was 2019 figures, and that says that in 2019 it was still sheep. So it was 9,530,000 sheep and 8,490,000 poultry. But I think because of and Emily's sort of shaking her head here, and I think it depends what everyone thinks has been happening this year.
Well, Gareth sold some since then, so
Yeah.
Also, if you look at the report, it's literally exactly the same number that was published in 2020 and 2019. Exactly the same number of sheep. So I'm not sure about that figure.
No,
not me.
So that was a trick question. I'm going to say you can have either of those.
I get 4 chickens.
13 in February 2020, SA the America 8018 became the most expensive bull ever sold at public auction. This is the nearest gets the points for this one. Guy, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Rishi Sunak bought it for 10 billion.
Gareth?
I've said 10 million US.
10 million, okay. Emily?
I went 25. I like the sound of him.
Okay. And Johann?
A bargain 1.2 million.
Oh, see, this is the journalist gets it here. I think you're pretty close. Yeah, it's 1.51 million. Yeah.
That was a complete guess.
Oh, he says that.
Thanks, Steve, for that question. That was a good one. According to a poll by the Innovation Center for US Dairy, what percentage of American adults think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows? I don't say I didn't fact check this one. I'm going to guess that Jude. I don't know where Jude got this from, but the answer is A, 7%.
It's 7%. I saw that at the time. It's hilarious.
I put 25.
15. What was the percentage decrease on oilseed rape area planted in 2019-2020 compared with the previous year? It was B, 32%. The old granny question is C, 27 calves in 29 years.
Get in.
That was 16, 17. Now how many followers does Gareth Wyn-Jones have in total across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram? And I have to say, this might have changed. It's probably gone up several million since I wrote the question. Because
No,
Ali,
not millions. Don't pretend with it now. Come on.
Ali gave me this a while ago. The answer then was 98,600.
Wow.
Do you reckon that's right, Gareth?
No. I'll give you the breakdown. So
Okay.
35,000 on Twitter,
Okay.
10,500 on Instagram,
Yeah.
and 55,000 on my business Facebook and personal. And that's without 2,763 now on TikTok.
Ooh.
Whoever's closer to that, baby.
Well,
Do you mind
Is all I can
living?
say to that.
As Welsh don't like doing sums.
who got closest to that, do you reckon? Who said round about 100k?
I put 24, so two.
Oh,
Shame on you.
oh.
Shame on me.
Johann, what did you say?
I put 78,000.
Okay. Gareth, I take it you got it pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah. and Guy, what did you say?
What? I don't understand Welsh at the best of times.
Gareth and Johann get the points. Yeah, the DEFRA question. According to DEFRA in February 2020, what was the average farm size in England? Let's go around with this one. Guy.
No, let Emily start first.
No, you can go first, Guy.
No, I think we should start with Emily.
Yeah.
For a long while, it was about 57 hectares or 51 hectares, which was always a joke because anybody knows that any farm that size isn't a real farm. But I think it's still not much over that. 70, 75 odd, something like that.
Yeah, I concur.
Okay.
I went for 140 acres because I like to be old-fashioned.
Yeah, I went for 180 acres.
That's prairie farmers in Wales you're getting confused with.
Gosh, I'm having to do some conversions here. Hang on.
Times 2.47.
Yeah. I'm trying to do my. So I think the answer is 86 hectares, or 212 and a half acres. So I think that Johann is actually closest.
Oh, bring it on, Lou.
Yeah. Well, points to him. The politician question, that was Michael Gove for 19.
Yeah.
And question 20, whatever you said gets a point because it was actually a trick question. They all did.
Delia did it best, though. Not that I'm biased.
Okay, again, we're being honest tonight. Add up your scores, and what do we get? And then I'm gonna add up Guy's and Emily's, and then Gareth's and Johann's.
14.
14. Oh, good score.
Yeah.
And Johann?
So I've done it the other way around. I got 5 wrong. So does that mean I got 15?
15.
Yeah.
Very good. So 29 for you. And Guy?
Well, I've given myself quite a few bonus points.
I'm sure you have.
But I reckon there's about 13 ticks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Emily?
Yeah, I mean, go figure. It's somewhere between like 10 and whatever the total number of points were that was available, which I didn't quite get all of those. But like,
and Ben, it should be noted that the questions I got wrong, Emily got right.
Oh,
there you go. So it was at least 4 marks, but then I lost
So-
track of how many questions there were and how many points were available. So
I think in terms of numbers, though, I think we're going to have to crown Gareth and Johann for this year. 2020 champions. Well done.
Well, in the words of Mr. Trump.
Big news.
I didn't even touch on that this year. We're going to finish, though, with a question, which is not a quiz question, you'll be pleased to hear, but it's a question from John Pawsey, Suffolk farmer. When Joe Strummer, the frontman of The Clash, was asked what he would do if he were made king, he said, I would pass a law that gave a pair of Doc Martens and an electric guitar to every child on their 16th birthday. Given the year we've just had, what 2 things would you give farmers this Christmas to ease their way into 2021? Guy.
I said the only thing that's kept me sane this year, when all the pools and gyms are shut, is a push bike. So I am a born again mammal in lycra, but it's something that when you get to my age, you don't often take up new pursuits. But so I think push bikes definitely I'd give all farmers them, and I'd give them a vaccination as well.
Yeah, Emily.
Yeah, it was interesting, tough question. I was thinking, as I alluded to earlier, everybody just wanted a good food crisis before. We've had that polarisation thing, so you can't give that anymore. So I was then going to go for 12 months of predictable weather. But then equally, I think if we had predictable weather, anybody could do this job. And the reason that we all do this job is because it's difficult, not because it's easy. And so I think, the challenges that we face are what bring good farmers to the fore. And so my only gift that is within my power, not even to give, but to suggest it would be a ticket to the Oxford Farming Conference a few days ago.
Was expecting that one as well.
The hottest ticket in town.
Very good. Gareth?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit of a bore. I'm going to ask that we can have a free trade deal as the first thing for farmers. And the second thing for farmers, we can have a minister down in Parliament that understands agriculture and doesn't tell sheep farmers to turn to beef farmers. If you've ever been to Wales, I think he'd have a kick size 10 up his backside. Yeah, we need a positive year, and that's what I'd give my farming friends.
I reckon asking for a Minister of Agriculture that understands farming is like asking for one of them never-ending pints, basically, isn't it?
Gareth, at least he didn't tell you to go into chickens. That would have been worse.
Chuck.
Johann, let's have the final word from you.
Yeah, I thought this was really difficult as well, and it's back to that uncertainty thing again. And I appreciate what Emily says, that if we all knew what was in the future, kind of thing, we'd all be able to do it. But I thought a crystal ball would be good, just maybe for 1 year, so we could see what's coming, and a set of blinkers, so that we could just sort of keep our eyes focused on the way ahead, rather than get distracted or pulled one way or the other by whatever the latest fad is.
Oh, like that. Well, that is all we have time for. But a huge thank you to my guests tonight, Guy Smith, Emily Norton, Gareth Wyn-Jones, and Johann Tasker. That's also it for the podcast this year. I want to thank you all for listening and wish you all a very happy new year in 2021. As everyone here tonight said, let's make it a good one. Let's hope it is a good one. I'm taking a podcast break now for a couple of weeks, but the show will be back on the 11th of January when I'll be covering some of the stories that come out of the Oxford conferences. Until then, though, it's goodbye from everyone here and a very happy new year.